Hey everybody, it's your girl Racquel with Candid Stories of My Soul. I have a special guest today, and stick with us. We're going to get to the thick of things with this matrix we're living in. We're going to be talking about religion and spirituality and all those things. Stay with us and we'll be back. Much love and peace to all watching and or listening to Candid Stories of My Soul podcast with myself as the host, Racquel Shelby. From the moment we take our first breath and every experience that follows builds us up and creates the individuals we are today. In life, we will experience both the good and the bad because in order for balance to exist, both must coexist. There cannot be good without bad, nor can there be chaos without peace. We are souls experiencing humanity. The Creator is the author of it all. Whether we believe in a God source or not, He is within us all and is present at all times, embedded in us like our DNA. You will get to audibly witness many journeys of individuals as they are living, breathing, and ever-growing documentaries in the flesh. Many will attest to how the Creator was there, and many of these accounts will be mind-blowing. Please share with your family and friends and enjoy the message we have for you today. Hi, Miss Vanessa.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I already said your name, but you can go ahead and introduce yourself, what you do, and all that stuff.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to join you today. I appreciate that. My name is Vanessa Brooks, and let's see, how do I want to introduce myself? So, I am a former pastor, which is why most people want to talk to me now. Um, I started a church in 2006, and I pastored it for, I don't know, 14 years. 2019, I just felt led and inspired to, actually in 2016, I felt led to close our ministry, talk to our church about it. 2019, we made the decision to do it. Right after that, COVID came, so I knew that I had heard correctly. And so I spend my time coaching and counseling with other people who want to perhaps revisit their spirituality and deconstruct certain aspects of religion, and helping them also if they want to build their spiritual businesses. I'm a wife and a mama and a grandmama and a fur baby mama and all those things. Mentor to many. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Ooh,
Getting in trouble all over the internet.
oh yeah, oh yeah, you're busy. I'm also a wife, mother, fur mom. I have 2
Yeah.
dogs, 3 children, and a husband, and it can be a lot,
Oh,
especially trying to shed light on the world.
yeah.
So what? You're a pastor at one time. You're a former pastor. What
Mhm.
made you say, I gotta stop this? Like, how did this transition come about?
How much time do we have? Oh my God. So here's what I tell people. I wish I could center it to just one thing, but it wasn't just one thing. To be honest, from the time I became a born again believer, I started asking questions about everything because that's just the nature of who I am. I'm inquisitive like that by nature, right? So it's not one thing. It was just from day one, I had a lot of questions. Things that I read in the Bible, things that I saw happening unfolding in the church, things happening in my own life, things happening in the lives of other people, just created a lot of questions. And finally, I'm going to be honest, I started experiencing a lot of burnout and fatigue, depression, because I couldn't bear the weight of it any longer. Just trying to reconcile what I was reading in the Bible versus what we were doing in the church. It just didn't match, and it wore me out. And so I just made the decision to take care of my mental health and walk away from it.
Okay, so this is one of them things, no, for real, that you might not want to speak on. So I'm gonna ask this. Um, it is my understanding, and I could be ignorant, that when churches take on help from the government, they are not allowed to speak about certain things, or they can get in trouble for that. Did you do they come and talk to y'all or send you guys some form of paperwork, or how does that go about, or can we even talk about this? I don't.
My church, I didn't have a 501c3 church.
Okay.
Churches are automatically tax exempt, but there are churches that get 501c3 exemption, so they get federal grant money. I
Okay.
didn't have a 501c3. But I think ethically, churches, because there's supposed to be a separation between church and state. So I think even by law, churches are really not supposed to get involved in certain aspects as it pertains to politics. But I think we've seen that doesn't always happen. But no, I didn't have a 501c3 at my church.
Okay.
So
Okay. I think, it's weird. I kind of feel like that's
I can talk about probably most things that maybe others can't.
okay. Okay. That's good. That's good to know. I think it's kind of funny and kind of like hypocritical, because in a way you're not supposed to mix it two, but the one is always in the background of everything.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you might not be coming to the forefront saying it's, hey, it's me, but we know what's going on, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, to be honest, I think, and I don't want to make this be political because that's not what I'm here for, but I think between 2015 and 2016, just with all that was happening in the political arena with religion and politics, I really couldn't understand, because my version of Christianity, which for me meant trying to be like Jesus, trying to be Christ-like, right? And I'm looking at all of the activity that was going on, and I was like, I don't see Jesus in none of this stuff we're doing. I don't see Jesus at the church. I don't see Jesus in politics. I don't even see Jesus in my faith and religion. And so, yeah, for me, it was a lot of things were just very chaotic and confusing. And I've always been very outspoken about certain things. And when I started to awaken to different levels of truth, now I'm going to be honest, and this is something I need to say, because I think a lot of people assume that all pastors are just crooked, money hungry people. That was not me. My husband and I were volunteer pastors. And by that, I mean, we did not get a salary from our church. It was a small ministry here in my community. My desire was, I just wanted to help the community. So we had a evangelistic based, outreach based ministry. I did not take a salary. My husband worked full time. I worked full time and ran a business. We put money into the church out of our own pockets. A lot of times we were carrying the expenses of our church. So that ain't my story. All these horror stories that y'all read about with pastors, that was not me at all. Was I perfect? No, but my heart was just, I got saved, through my faith. I was able to get off of drugs and alcohol and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, let me go tell everybody about the power of God. Mm-hmm. And that was my motivation for starting a church. Now, when I got into the church and I started to see the politics that go on in the church, I started to see this is not what I signed up for. And I'm gonna be honest, some of that energy, it did start to rub off on me, because energy transforms. You know that. Mm-hmm. Energy can transfer onto your mental faculties. So I found myself kind of taking on that energy. And I'm gonna be honest, towards the end of the journey, I didn't like who I was becoming. I didn't like who religion was making me be. So it started to not feel aligned to my soul's purpose. And I just made the decision to leave. And you see, I'm trying to be very, very diplomatic in the things I say.
Oh,
because I was a pastor, so you have to be, you have to be careful. You can't just. I don't want it to seem like I'm coming off trying to out anybody. But
I agree. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, and I do want to make clear that I believe we're all in a state of involvement, and I think that those who are still comfortable in religion, if it works for you, if it's beneficial to you, by all means, you know what I'm saying, go for it. So I really believe that. And there's no way I would ever say that all pastors are were being sinister about what they're doing. And I'm glad you clarified from your perspective. Everything you said basically saying you had no motive to be shady. No. Because you were doing this on your own. You were fueling your own train. So, that's great to know. Were you raised religious? Like, were your parents very religious growing up or anything like that?
My mom was very religious. She was Baptist. My
Okay.
father, not so much. My mother was very religious, so I've been in church all my life, and that's something I try to tell people online when the online trolls come for me, like I'm a novice. I was basically born in the church. I grew up in the church. I've been in the church all my life. So this was not something that I just kind of stumbled upon. Um, so yeah, I was raised by a God-fearing woman, and I felt like most people for a few years, I kind of they call it backsliding when you're not in the church. So I went through a season where I wasn't in the church for maybe 5 years, but for the most part of my life, I've been in the church since day one, since birth.
Yeah, I don't understand the shaming that goes on and the persecution that goes on amongst what we call religious folk or people that are supposed to be followers of Christ. That I will never understand. But so what did your church have a denomination, or was it non-denominational, or
So the
how
church I was raised in was a Baptist church, but the church I ended up leaving that church and I joined what they call a
okay.
non-denominational Pentecostal church. And then
Okay.
the church that I founded and pastor was also a non-denominational Pentecostal church.
Okay. Okay. I have a
So,
Pentecostal apostolic background.
uh-huh.
Um
So you know, so you
Oh
know,
baby. Oh
and I
baby.
because I was an apostle, not just a pastor. I was also an apostle.
Oh wow.
So,
So when did you ever preach? Were you heavy on the fire and brimstone preaching?
um, I would say on a scale between 1 and 10, probably a 1. So
Okay.
here's the thing, no, and so the church sort of labeled me a heretic 20 years ago because I didn't preach fire and brimstone. I didn't preach a whole lot about hell at all. The message for my church, and it's kind of what I do now as a spiritual teacher, church. On church call it healing, right? So no, and again, that's why I think it was easy for me to transition out of church because I never really fit in the first place.
Okay.
Um, so no, my message was, God loves us. I did preach this sort of we're flawed, we're sinner message. I did preach that, but my thought was God loves us, and God's love covers our sin. Let's get our lives together and live for the Lord, kind of thing. So it was what we would call in the apostolic faith is what we call a deliverance church. I don't know if you're ever
Okay.
familiar with that, but that's what I branded myself as, a deliverance preacher. But a lot of the Pentecostal apostolic churches, they didn't really mesh with us too much in my church because we weren't hardcore enough. We were not fire and brimstone enough, I guess you would say.
If if you had to guess, or if you had to put your discernment on this, why do you believe that so many religious people believe in um and try to follow me what I'm saying? This might sound crazy, but I notice people try to use God as their personal hitman, bounty hunter. What else do they typically do? Why do people want other people to go to hell and suffer? And why do they want to believe that they're unworthy? And why do they cling so tough to this fear doctrine? Because I mean, I can't wrap my head around. I've all since a kid I was like, this just don't make sense. So, you know.
So there's two sides of it. I'm going to talk about as briefly as I can.
Okay.
There's the theological perspective,
Mhm.
and then there's the psychological perspective.
Okay.
So when I talk about the theological perspective, I'm talking about the Bible. Now I might get in trouble. So not with you, but whoever listens if they're not ready. I don't know how familiar you are with the Bible, but the Bible, if you read the Bible literally, which is what religion wants us to do,
Mhm.
the Bible is responsible for a large percentage of how we see God, because there are scriptures in the Bible, because we don't know how to read it right.
Mhm.
We don't understand metaphysics in the church, right? Now I use the Bible now as a metaphysical teacher, but in the church we don't do metaphysics. Everything is literal. So you've got all these scriptures that make it look like God is doing heinous things to people. There are scriptures where God gives permission to his prophets and to his chosen people to also do heinous things to people. So when you read that, all right, your brain says if you're reading that, then that applies to you too. So you think then that if God is saying that to those people in the Bible, that God is also saying that to you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why, for example, with me and the things that I've done, a lot of people in the church, and I mean, on TikTok, you should see some of the comments. I think you're on my smaller page. I have a bigger page on TikTok.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, I have another page. I use that one as to go get solace, because on my bigger page, it's like they say the most hateful things to me.
Oh, wow.
Like they have put death curses on my life, on my children's life, on my grandchild's life, all because I'm not in the church anymore. But then they always give me a Bible verse to substantiate that claim. So the
Bible
Bible,
thumping gangsters.
yeah, they definitely gangsters. So the Bible is a huge reason why. And then psychologically, right? We were raised by people who didn't have knowledge of self, which is why I love teaching the spiritual concepts so much. We were raised by people that didn't have knowledge of self. Somewhere in our journey, in the human experience, we lost that connectedness to knowledge of self. And so you've been hearing for generations that you are unworthy. Your mama told you that, your grandmother told you that, her grandmother told her that. So these stories began to just be passed along to us generationally. And then and many times we are born with this energy of unworthiness in our DNA already, because it's been passed down for so many generations. So when you add bad theology with twisted psychology, you get a really dangerous religion. And that's what's happened.
Yeah, going to church, I only remember them preaching a little bit out of Genesis, Proverbs, Job, Psalms, and Revelation. My question is, sometimes Matthew, Mark, Luke, if it's like around Easter.
Easter,
okay. My question is, why not take people from the front of the Bible all the way to the back? And why do we use one verse and preach on that one verse for 2 hours, maybe 3, maybe even 4?
I promise you, at my church, we study the book of Genesis through Revelation.
Oh, wow.
Okay. We did that probably 3 times over my 14 years of pastoring. I was cut from a different breed. So there's a couple of reasons why. I'm trying to be diplomatic.
I'm sorry. Am I starting it?
No, because I do this all the time on TikTok. So you ain't doing nothing. It's me. So, but this is one of the things as a doctoral student, one of the things what I'm doing is just really looking at like the skill set of clergy.
Mm-hmm.
In most of our churches, preparedness is not a requirement. Skill set is not a requirement. Training and knowledge, it's not really a requirement. Okay. Most ministers have what we call a calling. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we take our calling and we run with the calling. So you have people, quite honestly, who don't know how to study the Bible. Okay. They don't. So a lot of people seem to think that pastors they're lying to us or keeping things from us. Some of them might be, but I'm telling you, as a person who has been in the church all her life, and I've been around some of the most elite pastors all the way down to the storefront pastors, most of them do not even know how to teach the Bible correctly. Yeah. Because they've not been taught themselves. So we rely on these callings. So that's why you're getting that, let's just hop around the Bible kind of thing. Okay. And so I'm telling you that if most of us were to read the Bible and or teach the Bible from the beginning to the end, most people would not probably stay in church very long. One of the reasons why it was easy for me to exit out of the church is because I did read the whole Bible. I've read the Bible from cover to cover 7 times. over my journey, over my 28-year history as a Christian. But if you don't read it, which is why a lot of people stay in the pews too, because they don't read it either. So if you don't read it and you don't study it and you don't study any other writings outside of the Bible, and you're just sitting there waiting on pastor to give you a word, you have no knowledge of what's in that book.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, the Bible even says that my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So we have a lack of knowledge in a lot of our churches. And that's why you're getting that whole skip around kind of thing. Because the people were actually reading the Bible and they were reading it through a non-biased lens. First thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a whole lot of questions. For example, one of the first questions I asked myself, this is when I was a teenager, why are there two creation stories in the first couple of chapters of Genesis? Mm. You know, so why did God get so angry and create the flood and drown everybody out? There had to be children and babies, pregnant mothers. What kind of God would get so angry that he would do that? So I've been asking questions from day one. But if you don't allow yourself to go in that Bible and study and read and research and read other materials, you're not going to even have the wherewithal to ask these questions. So this is why you're getting these, these sermons that are just a scripture here and a scripture there and a scripture over there and skipping 5 books and that's why. Well, so there's a lack of knowledge.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
No, I was just going to say, like, we're taught you don't question God. And even in the Black household, we're not really given the floor to go back and forth with our parents. We are taught to be dictated to. This is what I'm telling you to do, and you better do it or else. Right? That's right. Now these children coming through, i.e., 3 of mine, they're different.
And both of mine
built different. They're gonna challenge it. They're gonna challenge it. Till they wear you out. Yes. These kids coming through are different. And that's not a bad thing. I want people to know it's not a bad thing. It's a part of evolution. We be looking like things ain't how they used to be. Why do we want things to be in the past? We're supposed to always go forward. And I think that's a lot of our problem. We live in the past too much. It used to be. It's not that way. And change.
It's going to take our children to change the world. Because it's going to take them to change it.
For sure.
Yeah, because so multiply that in the church. If we come through an era where you not only you can't question God, you can't question your parents, you can't question the pastor, you can't question. I was getting ready to cuss because I be cussing. You can't question. You can't question. I know I'm trying to be nice on your show. You can't. So you sit there with all these bottled up, because I know people have questions. But the brain is a very powerful instrument. It's a powerful creator that we've been given inside of our brain. And so if you're taught that it's disrespectful, that it comes with punishment to question those in authority, then you're not going to question. And this is why there are people sitting in the church dying spiritually. And I'm going to tell you, there's pastors sitting in the church dying spiritually too, because they know internally, know about shadow work. Well, in the church, we don't know what that is. We don't know. We just call that the devil. People are sitting in the church and they need to do some major shadow work. They need to work through their cognitive dissonance, right? Because they have 2-3 different sets of beliefs. They're trying to believe one thing and do another thing. And so what I'm doing at Life After Church is creating a platform, a space for the people who do want to have a safe place to ask those questions, to think out loud, to say, I had this thought, what do you think about this? Where they're not going to be judged and the fear of God is not going to be breathed on them. My desire is that people I'm not here to tell people what to believe, whether they need to stay in church, leave church, what religion they should. That's not my job. Right. My job is to create a safe community for people who want to work through their spirituality. They need to be able to do that without being judged, without condemnation, and without fear, because they don't have that in most of the churches, unfortunately. And it's really sad.
I'm sorry. You only have 4 minutes, right?
What time is it?
2:42.
That is crazy. We can go until like, right before 3.
Okay.
As long as it's right before 3.
Oh,
Dad, that
okay.
went by so fast.
I don't want you over there burning rubber into the
I
next
know.
thing.
I know, right?
um, what was I going to ask? Let's see. It was a deep question. Oh, and you kind of addressed it about people staying in the pulpit, but I'm in the congregation, so I kind of want to dive into that. So when we go to school, right? We
Mhm.
get programmed from K through 12. After you 12, you graduate. If you choose anything other than that, that's a choice. Okay. But the point is, there is an exit period. If why don't people think there is an exit period to church? One, and two, why? And this is not trying. I'm sorry, pastors. I ain't trying to, get in on y'all hustle
You ain't
or
trying to
whatever
comfort
y'all.
nobody, right?
I ain't
You
trying to
ain't trying
step
to
on
comfort
nobody's
nobody.
toes. I'm just saying, if I can read the book, because really it's got to go by my interpretation. If I could read the book, why do I need you? I don't know. I just
So you already answered your question though. So the same way you go through K through 12, which is a indoctrinated time frame for us all.
mm-hmm.
How many parents, I'm talking about like decent parents, how many parents tell their children, you can drop out in the 6th grade, you can quit in the 10th grade? Most of us don't do that. So I'm saying that to say when you enter into the space of the church, you got to understand the how we get there in the first place. You get there through a couple of ways. One, it's for a lot of people, it's just what we do as a family. This is the right thing to do. But for a lot of people, they have been indoctrinated with this fear of hell and a
Yes.
fear of God. So if you think that when you transition from this life, that you're going to have to stand in front of a man called God and possibly be escorted to a place called hell where you are tormented for the rest of eternity, and the only thing that's going to prevent that from happening is you stay here at this church, what you gonna do? You gonna stay at the church, or you gonna take your chances on hell? So most
Right.
people stay at the church because it's because of fear and because of ignorance. So people like me, whether the church understands my journey or not, I just believe that I'm being used by the Most High, by the Spirit, to open a can of worms for a lot of people, but help others. And so I teach on these concepts. I teach about hell. I
Okay.
teach about, the Bible and where it comes from. And is it true? Is hell real? Is heaven real? I have to teach all these concepts because these are the concepts that have created so much fear and ignorance within us. And you know as well as I know that if a person is operating in an energy of fear, you can't go beyond that. You
Mm-mm.
can't move. Fear is the lowest form of energy that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's where you're operating at, and you don't even realize that you're operating in fear, you think that what you have is the truth, you're going to be stuck. And you're going to just wait and get all of your rewards and all of your blessings on the other side. So meanwhile, we have people who are missing out on the breath of life that they're supposed to have on this planet because of all these fear-based indoctrinated untruths that they've been taught. And I, as a former pastor, taught some of those same untruths because I didn't know any better. I was ignorant too. And I feel like it's my obligation and my responsibility to right those wrongs by now teaching people what I now believe to be the truth. And I don't believe that hell is a real place at all. I know it's not because I've done the research. I don't believe that we have an angry God who's destroying people for being human. All those concepts that I was believing before have been totally deconstructed in my life. And I feel the same passion and the same calling I had to preach the gospel as a pastor. I have that same calling and that same passion now to preach this new gospel, this true gospel that's going to truly set people free. And so you're right. You don't have to sit in a church and to have anybody tell you anything, because there is no middleman to God. We don't need a mediator. Even the Bible tells you that. The Bible tells you, even if you want to look at this through a Christian lens, there is no mediator between you and God. You have access to God on your own. And there is no prerequisite or requirement needed to access God. You just need the knowledge of who you are and the knowledge of knowing that you are one with God and there is no separation between you and God. Most people in the church don't know that. And so that's why they sit there. They really want the pastor to pray for them. They want the church mother to pray for them. They want the preacher to do it for them because they don't know that they have the power to do it themselves. Nobody's really telling them that, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely makes sense. We're constantly giving our power away.
Mm-hmm.
And what it really turns into is laziness. You want someone to give you something and instead of you doing it for yourself. And then that laziness, it spills over into other areas of our lives. You know, this is why we don't get organized. I'm sure it plays a part as to why we don't get organized and do some things that we could do and be progressive. You got some people thinking certain things, if it's not God's will. I had somebody tell me, I asked them what they were doing, were they going to school or whatever. And this is the time I was kind of in school myself. That's another sham. But anyway, in my opinion, if you ain't really doing something, you know, Dr. Laura, you know what I'm saying? If you ain't really doing something, it's a sham. Money grab.
Mm-hmm.
This person went on to say that they trying to do the work of the Lord, and if the Lord say something different, then they'll do that. I think and that's another thing too, using the Lord for excuses. You know, even using the word Lord can be tricky. Even our verbiage, I don't know. It's so many levels.
It's deep.
For real.
It's deep. It's a conversation that we could have for years because it's deep, and there's so many layers to it. And one of the first places I start with my community is teaching them about their brain. Because I can't help anybody until I get them to understand how their brain processes information and processes data. And it's really easy to convince the brain to believe something, even with no evidence of it. Mm-hmm. If you hear the same information enough, your brain just says, okay, this is true, and we're going to believe it. And so this is what's happening. So people say things like that, if it's the Lord's will. They heard their mama say that.
Yeah.
They heard their grandma say that. And it's just, people are just talking out of learned behavior. And so our people are going to have to wake up, and we're going to have to get knowledge of self. We're going to have to get knowledge of our history. We're going to have to tap into what true spirituality is. It's not religion. It's not anything that's man-made. It's an individual journey. And we got to take that fear and the ignorance out so that people are not afraid to go on that journey. Because right now, a lot of people are afraid of that journey because they've been so programmed by all these systems that you talked about, education and government and religion, even the entertainment and media, all these systems that spend millions of dollars to keep us distracted, to keep us disconnected, lack of knowledge of who we are. And that's their desire. Meanwhile, they, the elite, are prospering.
They're using prospering. Some of the stuff in their way that they don't want you to know about.
Absolutely. And all the things that they tell you, and this definitely happens in religion. All the things that religion tells you is wrong, is evil, is wicked, or whatever. I promise you, there are those elitisms that exist even in religion. There are some clergy at the top of this ladder who know the truth, and they are deliberately withholding that truth. Meanwhile, they are prospering with that same truth.
That's something else. So, it's so much to talk about. I'm going to have to get you back on here. I know you're busy. I got to get you out of here. let everybody know where they can follow you and how they can
Sure.
sign up or, put all your stuff out there.
So I'm on TikTok. It's called Life After Church. It's Life After Church everywhere. It's Life After Church on YouTube. It's Life After Church TikTok, Facebook, Life After Church. My website is www.lifeafterchurch.org. We have a Patreon community. It's also called Life After Church. If anyone wants to come into that community with us, we do metaphysical Bible studies on Sundays and live coaching on Tuesdays. So yeah, just type in Life After Church on Google and you're going to see me more than likely pop up.
Well, I thank you so much. Send me, if you can't, email me all of those links and I'm going to put them in the description because I want them to be
Sure.
able to get to you very, very easily. We want
Absolutely.
you visible. I thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. We must do this again because there's
Yes.
so much that can be talked about, but you got to get out of here.
I got to go. But let's schedule me for part 2 and we'll do it.
Okay, for sure.
Okay. Okay. Have a
a
blessed
good
day.
one.
You too.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you
Thank
later.
you. Talk to you later.
Okay.
All right.